My name is Dennis, and I have been married for 25 years with my wife. I am an honest person and have always acted fairly. I believe that justice exists. I instilled this in my sons, who have already grown up and are building their future on their own. But I also taught them that situations occur in life that you cannot predict, and then you need to make the right decisions. This situation happened to me, and now I will tell you about it.
Dennis, my mother's treating doctor just called me. She only has a couple of months left to live.
My wife Mildred said, and this news hit me early in the morning. I rubbed my eyes and wanted to know more about it.
I need to go take care of her for a couple of months, and then I'll come back to you.
It was terrible news not only because Mrs. Salinas was on the verge of death, but also because my wife Mildred might leave me for a couple of months. We've been married for 25 years, raised two sons who are now in college, building their own lives in different cities. Mildred's parents didn't like me, unfortunately, mostly because of her mother, who always said that her daughter deserved better. Her father, Mr. Salinas, passed away naturally, and as a result, Mrs. Salinas was left alone in another state. Mildred visited her often, at least a couple of times every 6 months, and even then these visits were for a maximum of 2 days. Now it was hard for me to imagine that I would have to stay home alone for a couple of months, and it might even extend.
Don't worry, we'll be in touch every day, and you can fly to me, where we can get a separate hotel to be alone and spend time together.
So you're not even considering the option of me going with you?
How would you go? I'll take leave from my job, and if you stop working, it will be very bad.
Mildred was right. We both worked our entire lives to give our children the best. We didn't have a luxurious house or car. We lived quite modestly, but were happy. Not every couple can boast about this after 25 years of married life. I got out of bed and went to wash up to gather myself and discuss all the details with Mildred. I wasn't particularly thrilled about the news that we would have to be separated for an indefinite period. And perhaps deep down, I wanted to mend relations with Mrs. Salinas.
Why hide in hotels when you could talk to Mrs. Salinas and she might allow me to stay at her house for a couple of days?
I'll try, and I'll let you know right away.
It was difficult to come to terms with the fact that I would be alone in our house, but I had to work, especially since the thought of us meeting and me coming to her warmed me. A week later, Mildred packed all her things and I escorted her to the airport.
I'll call you as soon as I land. Thanks for your support.
We passionately kissed goodbye and I sent her off on her flight. Returning home, I felt a sense of loneliness. After all, 25 years of shared life make themselves known, and I simply felt lonely. Mildred and I would call and chat via video every day. Our conversations could last for an hour or even more. In general, I was okay with it, but with each passing week, our communication became less and less frequent until we would call each other once a day and talk for a few minutes.
Hi, sweetheart, I miss you. How are you doing? Will your mom mind if I come?
Hi, it's better if you come next week, and we'll spend the night in a hotel.
I didn't understand why Mildred had so little time for conversations, considering she was just taking care of her sick mother. But apparently, that's how it had to be. I didn't pressure her and waited for the weekend, because after 3 weeks, we would finally see each other. Upon arriving in the city, Mildred didn't even meet me. She sent me the address via SMS of the hotel where we were supposed to meet, and I went there, booked a room. But Mildred came to me late at night, explaining that her mother couldn't fall asleep for a long time. We had a pleasant night, and I was happy to see her. But the next morning, I woke up alone, and Mildred left me a note explaining that her mom felt unwell, and she needed to urgently return home. I packed my things and flew back. I felt sad that we spent so little time together. I hoped to visit her at least once every 2 weeks, but Mildred kept changing plans all the time. 2 months passed, and during this time I was at Mildred's place only twice, and those were late-night meetings. With each call, I stopped feeling her warm response.
2 months have passed. When will you come back home?
Dennis, what's wrong? We're still in touch. It's not easy for me either, but I can't leave my mother.
I tried to live a normal life, home, work, but loneliness was burning me from the inside. That's when I decided to meet up with an old friend named Roger.
Hey, buddy, don't you want to come over to my place today?
Hi, why not? Let's go somewhere.
Roger had tried to pull me out of the house before, but I declined, because I didn't want Mildred to worry about me. But now I needed to distract myself, especially since Mildred was always busy, and I lacked real human interaction. Roger took me to a new bar called Sophistication, where you could enjoy good beer and play bowling or billiards. Having a few beers relaxed me a bit, and I felt relief for the first time in 2 months. Finally, I had a live conversation about all sorts of nonsense.
And when will Mildred come back home?
I don't know. It's been 2 months, and I'm already irritated by the whole situation.
Roger could see how tough it was for me, and I shared everything that was happening. He was shocked to learn that I had visited Mildred only twice and that our conversations were so brief.
Listen, you can understand her. The main thing is not to get mad at her, and everything will be fine. Maybe it's a test for your relationship.
I agreed with Roger, and we continued our evening. After a couple of rounds of beer, we went bowling, and I got distracted from all my negative thoughts. During the bowling game, a group of 3 attractive girls approached us.
Hi! We want to ask if you mind if we play with you. All the lanes are taken.
Yes, no problem, let's play,
said Roger, and we started the game. One of the girls had an engagement ring. She was a slim and tall brunette with cute freckles, and it was evident that she was a bit shy. The most active among them was Nicole. Apparently, she wasn't married and decided to take her friends out to have a good time. She made a lot of jokes, and we all had a pleasant time together. I wasn't ashamed of spending time like this, because if Mildred genuinely missed me and wanted to see me, she would have invited me at the first opportunity instead of postponing it. The evening ended on a positive note, and we stayed in the bar until midnight. The married girl left earlier than everyone, followed by her friend Roger, leaving only me and Nicole in the bar. I didn't want to leave because, for the first time in months, I felt alive. Apparently, I was tired of spending all my time at home, waiting for my wife. I love Mildred, and I'll wait for her, but I just decided to allow myself to relax. Nicole provided pleasant company. We had heart-to-heart conversations. I made it clear to her that I was married, so she shouldn't expect anything more. However, it seemed that Nicole wasn't bothered by that. I was in real euphoria, just sitting and chatting with someone. I won't deny that Nicole was very attractive and desirable, but I didn't feel drawn to her. I saw her as nothing more than a pleasant conversationalist. Closer to 2 a.m, we decided to part ways, and I went home. Despite having very little sleep, my day at work was quite productive, allowing me to leave early. Mildred didn't even send me a short text message the whole day. So, returning home, I decided to call her right away. I felt good and wanted to share my state with her.
Oh, Dennis, will you ever stop? How many times do I have to tell you that I'll call you myself when it's convenient for me? And by the way, this Saturday, it's better for you not to come. Mom and I are going to the hospital, and she will probably stay there, and I'll be with her. Bear with me a little. I'll be back soon.
She quickly said everything, and I didn't even have a chance to say a word. A few minutes later, I received a message on my phone saying, "Love you," and that reassured me. 2 days remained until Saturday, and if I didn't need to go to Mildred, I decided to go to the bar again and invite Roger. Unfortunately, he declined, so I went alone. Arriving at the bar on Saturday and sipping on a mug of beer, I reflected a lot. I couldn't understand why everything was dragging on and why I had to spend my time in the bar, waiting for my wife. I felt upset, but then I remembered Roger's words, who said it's a good relationship test, and that thought comforted me. My contemplation was interrupted by a hand touching my shoulder. It was Nicole's delicate hand.
I thought you wouldn't come back here anymore.
Well, I decided to take a break this Saturday evening.
Nicole asked why, being a married man, I spent my time in the bar, and I decided to share my story with her. I didn't reveal all the details, just told it as it was. Nicole was understanding and shared her story. Her ex-husband often went on business trips, and because of that, Nicole spent a lot of time at home. However, everything would have been fine if he hadn't cheated on her every time. She found out about the infidelity accidentally, looking into her husband's phone. I expressed deep regret, But Nicole said she had coped well with the situation and considered it a valuable experience, albeit a sad one. After that, we moved on to simpler topics and just chatted. I enjoyed being in Nicole's company. I couldn't call it flirting, more like a friendly conversation. I liked that Nicole treated me with understanding and didn't cross boundaries, which was important to me. At that moment, I realized that I missed female companionship, and we started meeting almost every day at this bar, simply enjoying each other's company. A week passed, and I had to get ready to fly to Mildred, but she once again postponed my visit. This situation began to bother me because it had been 3 months since Mildred left, and during this time we had only seen each other twice. So I decided not to listen to her and fly on my own, planning to surprise her. At some point, I even felt ashamed that my wife was taking care of her sick mother, while I, in her absence, roamed bars and talked to other women. I decided to fly on Friday, with a firm intention to talk not only with Mildred, but also with Mrs. Salinas. I wanted to mend my relationship with her, especially since I believed that being in such a situation, a person would not waste their energy on negativity. Boarding the flight, by evening I was in the city and decided to call Mildred, but her phone was off. I had no choice but to go to Mrs. Salinas' house. I knew the address since we had been to their home a couple of times before, so I quickly reached it from the airport. Standing in front of Mildred's parents' house, I felt some internal anxiety. I was afraid that Mrs. Salinas would be very angry to see me, especially because during our last meeting, she yelled so loudly that she had a nervous breakdown, and an ambulance had to be called. Summoning courage, I knocked on the door, but no one answered. After waiting for another 5 minutes, I realized it was useless, and most likely Mildred was in the hospital with her mother. Suddenly, a taxi approached the house and just stopped across from it. Due to the tinted windows, I couldn't see who was sitting in the back seat. I stood there watching, and nothing happened. I thought the taxi had come for me, but I hadn't called one, so I decided to approach it. Suddenly, my wife Mildred neatly stepped out of the back seat. She did it so quickly that I only managed to see someone's silhouette sitting in the back with her. She looked quite nervous, and those were the first words she uttered.
Dennis, what are you doing here?
I felt that she clearly didn't expect to see me, so I wanted to approach her, hug her, and kiss her. However, she quickly evaded me and headed into the house, opening the door and heading to the bathroom.
Sorry, I really need to use the bathroom.
Mildred looked very elegant, wearing some new short skirt and a blouse that revealed half of her chest. I entered the house and realized that Mrs. Salinas no longer lived here. Everything was clean and tidy, as if the house was being prepared for sale. I sat on the couch and waited for Mildred, who spent 15 minutes in the bathroom. She came out in just a towel and explained that she decided to take a shower since she had been running around all day and spent half a day with her mom in the hospital. She looked so sexy that I couldn't resist. I approached her and kissed her passionately. She clearly didn't expect this, but didn't resist. Then I gently took the towel off her and touched her body. I felt the fulfillment I had been missing so much. In recent weeks, I had been talking to Nicole, and I liked her. I was afraid I would lose my passion for my wife, but it seemed like I started to love her even more. Mildred tried to say something to me, but I picked her up and carried her to the bedroom. We ended up in some room with a large double bed. I gently threw her on the bed while I took off all my upper clothes. Mildred tried to reach for something, but I managed to interrupt her and climbed on top of her. She stopped resisting and completely surrendered to me. Her moans were so loud that I didn't want to stop. I touched her hair, hands, thighs, waist, chest, kissed her neck and lips. I missed all of this so much. Her moans echoed throughout the house. I had never heard her moan so loudly. Besides, Mildred made some new moves that made it even more enjoyable for me. I lay on her and lowered my head to her neck, continuing the process when suddenly I felt her reaching for something. I abruptly raised my head and saw Mildred hiding something under the pillow with her right hand.
What are you doing there?
Nothing.
I reached under the pillow and pulled out a pack with a used condom. I abruptly stopped, staring at the packaging, then began to carefully inspect the room. On the floor near the entrance to the bedroom were not my men's socks. On the bedside table stood a bottle of champagne, and next to it lay someone else's wallet. I took the wallet and pulled out the driver's license. It had the name Terry Ruiz written on it, and it smelled just like Mildred did when she avoided me during our encounter near the house. At that moment, a complete picture floated in my mind. I realized why Mildred decided to immediately take a shower. She was afraid I would detect the scent of another man on her and wanted to wash away all traces of her infidelity. Most likely her mother no longer lived in this house. Mildred lived here with another man. Then I abruptly got up from the bed. Mildred became repulsive to me. I looked at her body again, and nausea overcame me. I rushed into the bathroom and saw 2 toothbrushes there. In the corridor, there was not only Mildred's footwear, but also a pair of men's shoes. Mildred ran out of the room and began to beg me not to jump to conclusions. She was apparently afraid that I would resort to physical actions, but that wasn't my style. I didn't want to end up in prison, so I went to gather my things. Mildred tried to justify herself, but her tears and excuses only further confirmed the fact of her betrayal. She chose an extremely unsuccessful tactic. My world collapsed. I couldn't believe that the closest person to me, with whom I had spent 25 years together, had deceived me all this time. I packed my things and ran out of the house to catch the next flight. On the other side of the street, I saw the silhouette of a man who was clearly watching me. I didn't do anything, went in the opposite direction, called a taxi, and headed to the airport. Throughout my journey, Mildred tried to contact me, but I didn't respond. I realized that serious measures needed to be taken.
Just now, my husband Dennis stormed out of my late mother's house, who unfortunately passed away a few days ago in the hospital. I felt great shame. I did not expect Dennis to come to me. I was planning to return home in a few days and surprise my husband. It was a difficult period in my life, and I had to compromise with my mother. When I had just arrived, my mother asked me for one favor, to leave Dennis and try a relationship with a guy named Terry, whom my parents had set me up with. They wanted me to marry a wealthy guy. His parents were involved in some business, and Terry was well off. So, 25 years ago, when I introduced Dennis to their house, my mother was immediately upset. She wanted me to marry Terry. I didn't listen to them and made the decision to be with Dennis because I loved him. But when I returned to my sick mother, she wanted me to at least try a relationship with Terry. A couple of days later, Terry came to my mother's house, starting to court me. I made it clear to him immediately that I didn't want a relationship with him and that we would just play a role for my mother. Terry silently listened to me. My mother was happy. Terry and I deliberately acted like a couple, pretending that I enjoyed spending time with him, although it was terrible for me. Every evening, I cried because I was forced to do this and was afraid to tell Dennis because he would come and take me away, which would greatly affect my mother, who was already in a difficult situation. I never listened to my mother, but seeing her painful condition, I couldn't disobey her. Terry and I slept in different rooms, but literally after a couple of weeks, the situation changed when Terry invited me to a restaurant under the pretext of having a meal. We had some wine, and my first intimate encounter with him happened in the same hotel where Dennis and I had stayed a few days ago. I don't know why, but I enjoyed the intimacy. Maybe it was due to the influence of alcohol or because it had been a long time for me. But after that, we started sleeping together in my mother's house. I didn't consider it as betraying my husband. I convinced myself that I was just playing a role for my mother and nothing more. For me, it was just a game. My mother started seeing our relationship and was very happy about it. In the second month, my mother was admitted to the hospital, and the doctor said she had only a couple of weeks left to live. I took this news very hard, and I needed support. I don't know why, but I started inviting Terry when there was no need for it. It didn't occur to me that I could invite Dennis to the house, and we could spend a few days together. But I was afraid of him coming here because I understood that he would immediately realize the fact of my infidelity. I physically cheated on Dennis, but not emotionally. I still love Dennis and want to live with him. I saw his gaze as he frantically searched the room for signs of my unfaithfulness. I got scared, thinking he might not endure it and would want to hit me, but he didn't. He ran out of the house and disappeared from my sight, and I was left crying in the house, not knowing what to do next. A couple of minutes after Dennis left, Terry entered the house, who was with me in the taxi.
Mildred, what happened? Was that your husband?
Get out!
He tried to hug me, but I pushed him away and ended up kicking him out of the house. The whole night, I couldn't sleep and was afraid that Dennis would now tell everything to our sons, his parents, freeze our accounts, change the locks in the house, and completely erase me from his life. The next few days were filled with stress as I prepared the house for sale on my own, and Dennis never reached out to me. Every time I checked my phone, I anxiously opened the bank profile to see our accounts. But Dennis didn't block anything, giving me minimal hope. On Tuesday, I decided to return home, postponing the sale of the house. I couldn't think straight, so I wanted to go back to Dennis, talk to him, and hoped he would forgive me. I sent him a text with my flight number, hoping he would pick me up from the airport. But alas, it didn't happen. I had to get to the house on my own. I inserted the key into the door and sighed with relief. The key worked, meaning Dennis hadn't changed the locks. I entered the house and was surprised. It was crystal clean. Everything was in its place. The floors were mopped. Going into the kitchen, I saw the same. It seemed like no one had lived in the house. The fridge was full, the dishes were clean, the windows were spotless. This gave me hope that Dennis was just upset with me and probably would forgive me. I went upstairs with relief, hoping to find him there. Entering our bedroom, I saw the same cleanliness. The bed was perfectly made. But there was something on it that caught my attention. On the bed lay a folder with documents, and on it, in large letters, was written, "Divorce Documents." My world collapsed, and next to the documents was a note.
Don't try to find me. It's pointless. I trusted you, and you deceived me so shamelessly. You can live in this house. I don't care. When you read this, call my lawyer. The number is on the back of the note.
I started to cry. My hopes crumbled in an instant, and I didn't know where to go. I don't remember exactly, but I spent about 3 hours sitting by the bed, wiping away my tears. I wanted to find Dennis and talk to him, explain my position. I'm sure he would understand and forgive me. I wiped away my tears and tried to think where he might be at the moment, either at work or with his friend Roger, if I remember his name correctly. Dennis mentioned a couple of times that he went to a new bar with him to play bowling. First, I decided to call his workplace to find out if he was there today, but his boss said he had a day off. So I went online and started searching for a bowling bar. Fortunately, there was only one in our entire city. I immediately called a taxi and went to that place. Approaching the bar, I became scared. What if Dennis is inside, and what will I say to him? Thoughts began to frighten me, but I gathered my courage and walked inside.
I was at the bar with Nicole. Ever since the day I caught my wife cheating, it's been a few days. I haven't been intimate with Nicole. We just spend time together every day, showing mutual sympathy. But I don't want to stoop to the level of my wife, sleeping with someone else while still in marriage. Nicole supported me, and every night I slept at her place. We even kissed a couple of times, but it was on the cheek. I found Nicole attractive, and I didn't hide it, just as she didn't. If I use it to think that she just wanted to have a one-night stand with me, now I have a completely different opinion. I realized that we simply enjoyed being together, and I was eagerly awaiting the divorce to have her all to myself. As usual, we were playing bowling and having a good time. Roger and his girlfriend were with us when suddenly Nicole touched my shoulder and whispered in my ear.
Turn around.
Turning around, I saw Mildred staring at me. I didn't expect to see her in this bar, so I told Nicole not to worry. I put my arm around Nicole's waist, and we turned away from Mildred. Mildred stood there for about 5 minutes watching us. I didn't even want to look at her, so I asked Roger to approach Mildred and explain everything. Roger gladly accepted my proposal and went to talk to Mildred. All I heard in the end was a scream that echoed throughout the bar.
Traitor!
After that, a loud slam of the door followed. I didn't feel guilty because I kept my wedding vows, and at least I didn't cheat on Mildred physically, unlike her. I hoped our divorce would be peaceful because I had no intention of ruining her life. I respected this woman, at least up to a certain point, so I hoped for an amicable outcome. To my great relief, Mildred didn't resist and granted the divorce calmly. Mildred tried to explain her position to me several times, but I wasn't interested. No betrayal can be justified. The only thing she wanted to know was if I cheated on her with Nicole. I answered no, and it was the absolute truth. Nicole and I engaged in our first sexual encounter literally after my official divorce. She waited for me. Nicole ignited a new spark in me and helped me cope with this situation, for which I am very grateful. she truly saved me. I don't consider 25 years of marriage a waste of time. It was a happy time for me, and I have no regrets. Now I'm so happy in my new relationship, probably even more so because I am valued and respected, which unfortunately wasn't the case in my past relationships. Mildred started dating a guy named Terry. She fulfilled her mother's request and moved in with him. I don't know if she loves him or if it's all for the money. I don't care. What matters to me is that I am happy and living an honest life.
That's the end of the story. Write your opinion in the comments. It will be interesting for us to read it. What do you think? Could the wife of the main character not be led by her mother? Is it possible to justify her betrayal? If so, in what way? Could the husband have realized earlier that his wife was cheating on him? What were the red flags? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like it. Good luck.